Hello, 7th graders. We're doing another day of comparing fractions. Today we're going to be doing stuff with mixed numbers and improper fractions, alright? We're also going to go through this without using calculators, because I know you can do some of this work on your calculator, but we want to try without our calculators, alright? So here we go. A quick review of what is a mixed number. A mixed number has a whole number, so this 2, and a fraction part, 1/4. 2 and 1/4, that's a mixed number. 1 and 1/6, a whole number and a fraction combined. Or 4 and 24/25, alright? So that's a mixed number. The other one is an improper fraction. Right? An improper fraction is a fraction whose numerator, the top number, is more than the denominator, the bottom number. So 11/7. The 11 is larger than 7. 67/4 and 15/9 are all improper fractions. Alright, let's get started writing a mixed number as an improper fraction. So if I have this 2 and 5/8, right now it's a mixed number. I want to write it as an improper fraction. To do this, there are a couple steps. First, I'm going to multiply the denominator, the 8, and the whole number part. So 8 times 2, or 2 times 8, gives me 16. Right? My second step then is I'm going to add that 16 that I get multiplying the 2 times 8, add that to 5. Alright, so 16 plus 5 gives me 21. And my last step then is to write that sum, the 21, over the original denominator of 8. So to write this mixed number as an improper fraction, I'm going to multiply 2 times 8, add the 5, put that number over the original denominator. So I get 21/8. Let's try it again. Here I've got 3 and 5/6. First, I multiply 6 times 3, and I get 18, right? And then 18 plus 5 gives me 23. So I'm going to write 23 over the original denominator of 6. 23/6. Alright, my 3 steps. You might want to make notes of these so that you can use those notes on the next slide. Alright, I want you to practice these 3. Alright, give them a shot, see what you get, and we'll check them in a second. Alright, 4 and 2/7. That is going to give me, well, 7 times 4 is 28, plus 2 is 30. So I get 30/7. The second one here, 5 times 10 is 50, plus 1 is 51. So I have 51/10. And down here I have 11 times 2 is 22, plus 2 is 24, so 24/11. Alright, that is writing a mixed number as an improper fraction. What about if I want to go the opposite directions? I have an improper fraction, and I want to write it as a mixed number. Alright, so let's say I have 7/3. Right now I have a larger number for my numerator. That makes it an improper fraction. If I want to change this to a mixed number, 2 steps. First, I have to divide the numerator by the denominator, right? A fraction is basically division anyway. So I'm going to go 7 divided by 3, and I'm going to get a remainder. It's 2 remainder 1, because 7 divided by 3 gives me, well, 3 times 2 is 6. There's 1 left over, so I have 2 remainder 1. So now I'm going to write that remainder as a fraction. So this is going to be 2 is my big number, my whole part, and then 1/3. 1 is my remainder, and it goes over my 3, over my original denominator. Alright, right. Let's try another one. 14 divided by 3. Well, that's going to give me 4 remainder 2. Alright, so I'm going to write that as 4 and 2/3. Alright, divide the numerator, the top number, by the denominator, the bottom number. Write the remainder over the original denominator. Alright, I'm going to have you practice a couple of those also. Practice these. Let's see what we get. Alright, let's look at these. If I have 31/8 and I have to write that as a mixed number, well, 31 divided by 8 gives me 3, remainder 7. So I would have 3, and that 7 goes over my 8, so 3 7/8. 31 divided by 6 is going to give me 5 with a remainder of 1. So I'm going to have 5 1/6. And 21 divided by 6 is going to give me 3, remainder 3. So I'm going to have 3 3/6. But one thing I always want to make sure I'm doing with my fractions, I want to write them in simplest form, alright? So 3 3/6 is not simplest form because 3 and 6 are both divisible by 3. So if I simplify this, I'm going to get 3½ Alright. Let's look at comparing some mixed numbers now. Right? There's two different ways I could compare them. I could compare them as mixed numbers or improper fractions. Either way, I need to find some common denominators to do this. Alright, so if I'm trying to compare 3 3/7 and 17/5, right now I've got a mixed number and an improper fraction. Alright, so to do this, I think I'm going to do both of them as mixed numbers, alright? So 3 3/7, if I'm trying to write it with their least common denominator, which I found by 7 and 5 both go into 35. So I'm going to rewrite 3 3/7 as 3 15/35, right? Because 3 times 5 is 15, 7 times 5 is 35. And then I'm going to take my 17/5, I'm going to rewrite that as a mixed number. So 17 divided by 5 would give me 3 2/5. Well, 3 remainder 2. So that'd be 3 2/5. And then I want to change that 2/5 to 35. So I'm going to multiply the 2 and the 5 both by 7. And I get my 3 14/35. Now I can compare. I have 3 wholes for both. And then I have 15/35 over here and 14/35 over here. So this first one here, this is larger. So I'm going to go back to my original fractions that I was given when I'm comparing, and I'm going to say that 3 3/7 is greater than 17/5. Alright, let's look at another one. 8/3 and 2 5/6. This time I'm going to do them both as an improper fraction. So 8/3 is an improper fraction, but I've got thirds and sixths, so I need to find a least common denominator. Well, 3 goes into 6, right? So 8/3 becomes 16/6. I multiply the top and bottom both by 2 and get 16/6. 2 5/6, I'm going to go 6 times 2 is 12, plus 5 is 17. So 2 5/6 becomes 17/6. All right, now I can compare those. I have 16/6 and 17/6. So I'm going to go back to my original fractions, right, to compare. I'm going to say that 8/3 is less than 2 5/6. All right, here's a couple for you to try. We'll look at these in class. One more slide then, so solve these in one last slide. All right, what did you learn or were you reminded of, and what questions do you still have that you want answered?